Forsyth County School Board. I'd like to persuade you to buy a book for the Forsyth Central Library, The Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. To quickly summarize this book, in part one, he talks about his boyhood, and that's where it starts, and he talks about, this is where he really shows that he's going to go deep into his thoughts, and he's not going to hide anything. So, he continues in part one to talk about his open-mindedness, and talk about his wanting for change, his wanting for reform in the world. And it even goes deep into his late 20s, and it shows him traveling to America and back to England, and he even talks about his own religious preferences, and he becomes a full deist. In part two, he starts the part two with 2 letters of virtue, really giving a theme for the rest of the book. He discusses becoming morally perfect, so he really shows that he really wants self-improvement throughout the book. In part 3, he begins his discussion of politics. He goes into making even his own party. He is becoming more successful, more well-known in America. He even founded University of Pennsylvania at this part. And to continue part 3, he travels to England to become the commissioner to England, and he wants to go speak for the colonies. And he even discusses the 7 Years' War between the English, Britain, and France. In part 4, he begins to talk about the discussions he had with the king about getting freedom for the colonies, but he could not finish this part because he died. One of my favorite quotes from the book was, "As we enjoy great advantages from the inventions of others, we should be glad at the opportunity to serve others by an invention of ours, and this is why we should do freely and generously." Now, I like that quote because it shows that he was a smart man, and he was one of the best inventors of all time, and that was great. And he was selfless about it, and he liked to give his inventions back to the people, and that was a very selfless thing to do. The book, while Benjamin originally wrote this autobiography for a source to his son and his family, by the end of the book it turns into a guide for living successfully, so it really morally guides you. Throughout the book, we are introduced to people who have had great influence on Benjamin's life, such as his father, mother, his older brother, his printer. His printer, the one that got him into journalism. Who knows where we'd be if it wasn't for him. The readability of this book is he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He just gives it to us straight, very unbiased, and that's important in any book. So you get to see the birth of a nation through this book. Franklin had become well established and famous in America, and he still was writing this book, and he wanted to help others even after becoming helped himself. Some other facts we can find from this book is, well, he was only educated for 2 years, which is surprising as smart as he was. He's known as the first American and the founding father of the USA. He even signed the Declaration of Independence, and he's credited with inventions such as the lightning rod and glasses. And he was born January 17th, 1706, the 15th child of his family, which is crazy. That's a ton amount of kids, so he was never lonely. And there's a national memorial for him in Philadelphia. After seeing some statistics on this book, it's already an educational must. The first reason is the connection you can make with other school subjects. This year I became interested in Ben Franklin due to a lecture I heard in world history. Even my teacher introduced me to this book. Learning is acquiring unknown knowledge. Reading this book makes you learn in 2 ways. You get a new range of vocab and a knowledge of American history. Growing up, my family gave me a strong passion for this country. My dad always gave me lectures on why America is the greatest country in the world. This book gives a great perspective of the way our own country became the way it is. The history of Ben Franklin is the United States history. This makes it an essential book for the library. Kids could drop out if they don't get to see this literary genius. Every other country in the world doesn't have an opportunity that we have. We can read about countless great men like Benjamin Franklin due to our superiority as a country. This book is like seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time. You witness beauty and see the roots of our country and see the basis our country was founded on. Not to mention how unbiased this book is. Franklin's hatred of opinion and journalism is the reason the book is the way it is. The pathos of this book is needed for every high schooler in America. Franklin leaves no emotion untouched. He goes deep into every emotion and helps you be guided through your struggles. That is why this book is so essential for high schoolers, because he can easily guide you, and he can guide even adults, because that's one of the reasons he published this book, to guide people to be morally perfect. He knows you can't get there, but he wants you to. And he wants you to get as close as possible. And finally, logos. Franklin shows a thought process through this book. And his thought process is something all high schoolers need to learn. And that's why another reason why the library needs to purchase this. You need to think through things, and he makes sure everyone knows you need to think through decisions, regardless how big and how small, because everything has a consequence. The learning process and the thinking process is needed, is one of the themes that he presents. To close this book, and why it should be in the Forsyth Central Library, is the sense of nationalism. The sense of nationalism you get from this book is something that I've only experienced twice in my life. That is how much pride I swelled with after reading this book, and how proud I was to be American. The dual education aspect, you learn U.S. history and world history from this book, going into many things that you can't really see from a first-hand perspective. It's very rare to see it from a first-hand perspective. The ethos, logos, pathos in this book, just all of those together make just a great read. And finally, that's the last point I want to make, how much of a great read this book is. It's absolutely fantastic, and I was starstruck to read a first-person account of what Benjamin Franklin went through and how he formed America.